Damn it. That light never works. Well, it's Halloween again, everyone. Anyway, it's a very special time of the year when you can shit your pants watching scary movies, practically make love to anything that has pumpkin spice in the title, and dress up and pretend to be somebody else just for one day. Speaking of which, where are those Halloween costumes? I don't see those costumes anywhere. Oh, shit! Oh. It's just a mask. Oh, thank God. It's just a mask. Oingo Boingo. You know, certain bands were about celebrating Halloween to the max, and one of them happened to be Oingo Boingo. Well, I'm all dressed up and nowhere to go, so you're gonna find out about Oingo Boingo on this Halloween episode of Pointless History. How does a rock band start? Getting influenced by role models? Forced to learn an instrument, perhaps? How about starting off as a musical circus street troupe? In 1972, Richard Elfman formed the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo. It ran from 1972 to 1979, going through 31 members. God damn. Most notable members being Leon Schneiderman, Sam Sluggo Phipps, Danny Elfman, Steve Bartek, Dale Turner, and Johnny Vatos Hernandez. Eventually, Richard Elfman probably said "fuck it," handed leadership to his little brother Danny, and went off to become a filmmaker. In 1979, Danny decided to move the group's direction from musical clown theater group to rock band group status. Being influenced by ska, new wave, and punk rock music of the time led to the group's transition. Originally trying out the name The Mystic Knights and not garnering attention led to them changing the name to something that would make them more known. The lineup during this time was Leon Schneiderman, Sam Sluggo Phipps, and Dale Turner in the horn section, Steve Bartek on lead guitar and backing vocals, Jeff Bree on bass and backing vocals, Johnny Vatos Hernandez on drums, Joe Berland on keyboards and backing vocals, and Danny Elfman on lead vocals and rhythm guitar. Within that year, they recorded the anxiety-inducing song, I'm Afraid. It was released on a compilation record called LA In, a collection of Los Angeles rock and new wave bands by Rhino Records. After this, Jeff Bree left the band and was replaced by Kerry Hatch on bass and backing vocals, and would eventually play the bass synthesizer. Then Joe Berland left and was replaced by Richard Gibbs on keyboards and backing vocals. After this, they released their self-funded promo EP known by fans as the Demo EP. It was distributed to radio stations for airtime and record company reps to help them get a record deal. Luck would have it, IRS Records helped them out with re-releasing a revised version of the Demo EP as a self-titled EP, with the songs Only a Lad, Violent, Love, Ain't This the Life, and I'm So Bad. During this time, there was a temporary lineup change. Johnny Vatos left the band briefly and was either replaced by or had substitute on the drums, the late David Eagle. Johnny eventually did come back. David Eagle also contributed his drum work on the Oingo Boingo EP. Best bet, Johnny probably had another drum gig with a different band and had David fill in for him. They made their first full-length album, Only a Lad, distributed by A&M Records and released on June 19, 1981. IRS releases were distributed by A&M Records. The album had notable songs like its album title, Only a Lad, Perfect System, and Nasty Habits, to name some. Only a Lad also had that one song that if you listen to, it would summon Chris Hansen. Hopefully you know what song I'm talking about. Danny claims that he likes to write songs from the viewpoints of characters, almost like a concept song, a tradition that he would continue on later albums. He claims he wrote from the viewpoint of a character who likes. This song also had a music video directed by Richard Elfman. Apparently, this music video is banned in Canada. I wonder why. This album is a multiplex of time signatures and keys, hodgepodging jazz and 20th century classical music with new wave, elements of punk, and ska, with lyrics about politics, socialism, satire, and shock humor. There were some demo songs meant for this album, like I've Got to Be Entertained, Teenage Monster, and Cinderella Undercover, along with others that were left as demos. Only a Lad had mixed reviews and narrow success in Southern California, with the support of LA's radio stations. Thankfully, this would change in the years to come. Rock critic Robert Christgau criticized the album for having catchy vocals and spoiled over arrangements, while Trouser Press writer Ira A. Robbins stated that it featured contrived bits swiped from the Tubes, XTC, and Devo to diminish the impact of reasonably clever lyrics and thoroughly competent music. But they did like the song On the Outside because it sounded normal. Most bands would get discouraged by negative reviews and press. Oingo Boingo was totally different. They would use bad reviews to fuel them and would even go as far as exploiting their negative press coverage in their songs. A great example is their song Imposter, a response to, as Danny has said,
a couple of assholes at the LA Times.
Around the same time, they appeared in the 1981 movie Long Shot, performing I've Gotta Be Entertained, and also appeared in the documentary Erg, A Music War, with a live version of Ain't This the Life and Imposter. Nothing to Fear was the next album, released on June 22, 1982, that featured songs like Private Life, Gray Matter, and Nothing to Fear But Fear Itself. There was a music video for Private Life, also directed by Richard Elfman. This album was the start of the slow-focused transition to new wave and ska, and not the mixture of these genres with classical and jazz music. Along with lyrics about intelligence, mental destruction, and escaping reality, Nothing to Fear had a more tough punk sound with overdriven electric guitars, percussion, synthesizers, and sequencers on some songs, mixed with custom-designed instruments built by the band, like the ballophones used on Gray Matter. Bro, I want to get these things so f***ing bad. Ira A. Robbins reviewed Nothing to Fear, stating it was more likable than Only a Lad, but still sounded phony, calling it derivative disappointment. Can't win them all. They had a song called Better Luck Next Time recorded for Nothing to Fear, but it was dropped from the album but picked up for the Last American Virgin soundtrack. They also had a demo song called Elementary Physics, but it was dropped and never recorded professionally for the album. During this time, their song Goodbye Goodbye was featured in the film Fast Times at Ridgemont High, also the soundtrack. Funny enough, the band would go on to make an opening theme for the Fast Times TV show. After the album's release, Oingo Boingo went on tour opening for bands like The Police and Fear. That's the band who performed on SNL's Halloween show and had the set destroyed by a bunch of punk rockers. But that's a topic for a future episode. Good for Your Soul was the third album, released on July 26, 1983. Still moving towards a new wave and ska sound, along with lyrics and themes of embracing the unknown, manipulative politics, and identity crisis, this album had songs like their title song, Good for Your Soul, Dead or Alive, Sweat, and No Spill Blood, a song inspired either by the novel or movie The Island of Dr. Moreau, or The Island of the Lost Souls, which inspired the song Jocko Homo by Devo.
Are we not men? We are Devo.
There was also a music video for the song Nothing Bad Ever Happens to Me. Like previous albums, there were demo songs dropped from the album. Ira A. Robbins surprisingly liked Good For Your Soul, stating it sounded like a streamlined and powerful driven attack, and enjoying the songs Wake Up, It's 1984, and Who Do You Wanna Be. In 1984, Oingo Boingo would have 3 songs in the movie Bachelor Party. Written for the film and featured in the film's soundtrack was Something Isn't Right and Bachelor Party. Who Do You Wanna Be off the Good For Your Soul album was also featured in this movie, as well as the movie Teen Wolf 2. They also had the song Only a Lad and an obscure song called Hold Me Back in the movie Surf 2. After this, the band was dropped from IRS Records. Kerry Hatch and Richard Gibbs had left Oingo Boingo in 1984 to form the band Zuma 2, but technically they did contribute to Danny's solo album called Solo, with the songs Lightning and Cool City, since they were demo songs for Good For Your Soul, but they never made it to the cut. Speaking of Solo, Solo is the unofficial Oingo Boingo album after being picked up by MCA Records, released in November 1984. Still sticking with the new wave and ska sound, but picking up elements of synth pop, along with lyrics and songs about a lively metropolis city, masculinity destruction, and appreciation, this album featured songs like Gratitude, It Only Makes Me Laugh, and Tough as Nails, to name some. Most of the Oingo Boingo members contributed to Solo, even though it was considered a solo album for Danny. They would even play songs live off this album later on with new lineups. It was a weird time for the band. Due to the departure of Carey and Gibbs, rumors that the band was breaking up, and MCA not being interested in Oingo Boingo. However, Danny had the show must go on attitude and wanted to continue Oingo Boingo. With some convincing, MCA changed his recording contract to Oingo Boingo after the release of Solo. There was a pivot with Danny's career during this point in time, but we do have to back up a little bit. During the transition of Oingo Boingo going from circus troupe to rock band, Danny's brother Richard was writing and directing a movie that became a cult film called Forbidden Zone. That's a topic for another future episode. Richard had Danny score music for the film, got Oingo Boingo to do the title theme, and had an appearance from the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo themselves, with Danny playing the devil. Alright, let's fast forward this bitch. In 1984, going into 85, Paul Reubens, God rest his beautiful soul, and Tim Burton had worked on Pee-wee's Big Adventure. They were looking for someone to score music for the film. Paul originally approached Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo to score the film, but due to schedule conflicts, he wasn't available, but made it up to Paul by scoring Pee-wee's Playhouse. Speaking of Devo, supposedly they were originally going to score the music in Forbidden Zone, according to Steve Bartek and Jerry Caselli. Next in line was Danny Elfman, who was at first apprehensive about scoring, but decided to make a demo of the title music, with the help of Steve Bartek arranging and assisting the orchestra. Paul and Tim loved it and hired Danny Elfman to score Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and thus, Danny Elfman's film scoring career started. Alright, let's get back to Oingo Boingo now. In 1984, the band recruited new bass player John Avila and new keyboardist Michael Bakic. With this new lineup, they went on to make and release their most well-known and successful album, Dead Man's Party. Released on October 28, 1985, this album had songs like Dead Man's Party, Just Another Day, Stay, and Weird Science, used for the film with the same title. A song that would eventually annoy the hell out of Danny. Since it was a song written for the film, Danny considered this song not part of the band's repertoire. This album had themes of isolation, entropy, intimacy, and paying homage to Dia de los Muertos. There were also a couple songs that never made it to the album, like Take Your Medicine, although it was released on the Live for Life compilation album to help raise funds for the AMC Cancer Research Center. And I Stand Defeated, a rare song played with the previous lineup and was supposed to be recorded for Only a Lad, but it never happened. They attempted again with Dead Man's Party, actually recorded it, but it was cut from the album. Oingo Boingo was still sticking with the ska, pop, and new wave sound. I should probably stop calling Oingo Boingo a new wave band, since Danny hated this term. He even supposedly got into a fight with someone calling Oingo Boingo a new wave band.
Got in a fight. A guy who called us a new wave band.
The next album was Boingo. Is it pronounced Boingo? Yeah, but does the dash in the middle cause a pause in the pronunciation? Words are fucking confusing. I'll just call it Boingo. Boingo still being considered new wave, but had elements of pop rock and the themes of the pursuit of pleasure, life changes, and relationship issues. It had songs like Home Again, Elevator Man, We Close Our Eyes, Not My Slave, and Pain. The song New Generation was originally recorded for Dead Man's Party, but was cut and put onto this album instead. There is actually no music videos made for any of the songs from this album. Like previous Oingo Boingo albums, there were demo songs recorded but cut from the final album, like Inside, Find You, Mama, and Remember My Name. Cinderella Undercover was another cut song from this album, which was also a demo song recorded but cut from Only a Lad. It was recorded again for Boingo, but suffered the same fate. However, this song and Mama would be played live and would be recorded for Oingo Boingo's next album, Oingo Alive, released on September 26th, 1988. It's technically a live album, but there's no audience. The band recorded a session of old songs, including a new song called Winning Side, in an empty music venue. This was during a minor lineup change with the band. Keyboardist Michael Bachich left after Boingo was released and was replaced by Carl Graves. With this lineup, they released the album Dark at the End of the Tunnel, released on February 20th, 1990. It had songs like Skin, Try to Believe, Glory Be, and Out of Control, which was a song inspired by letters that Danny would get from fans who contemplated about suicide, and to help those going through a rough time. There would also be a music video in tie with the song. This album had mellow, slow, emotional songs compared to their songs in the past. It seemed to be a concept album about a character going through a rough patch in their life, but getting through it, seeing light at the end of the tunnel, and coming back stronger and better than ever. Oingo Boingo was always slightly changing their sound and appearance with each album. This album keeps elements of ska, but trades new wave for alternative rock. But there would be a big change on the next album. 1992 was a quiet year for Oingo Boingo, since Danny Elfman was busy scoring films. Around this time, he had scored The Nightmare Before Christmas and even did the singing voice for Jack Skellington. When Oingo Boingo came back in 1993, they brought some new members known as
The Sad Clown and Happy Sailor Orchestra here.
Consisting of Doug Lacey, Mark Mann, and Keturah Clark. Also, one of the new members, not part of the Sad Clown Orchestra, was additional guitar player Warren Fitzgerald. Oingo Boingo, or as they were going by at that time, just Boingo, were dropped from MCA Records, picked up by Giant Records, and had some new lineup changes. The horn section was completely dropped, and Carl Graves had left the band. This was due to Danny's interest in taking the band in a new direction. By this point in time, 90s music was becoming heavier and more grungy, and this caught Danny's ear. Boingo went from being this new wave sounding band to an alternative prog rock sounding band. They even changed up their clothing style to baggy skateboard clothes. This big change in lineup, look, and sound would lead to the band's final album, Boingo. Wasn't there an album called Boingo? Whatever. Oingo had very dark and depressing themes of controlling cults, violence, war, and escaping, with songs like Insanity, War Again, Marry, and a cover of the Beatles song I Am the Walrus, which is actually a pretty good cover. This album also had a song called Lost Like This that was originally a demo for Good For Your Soul but was dropped from the album but picked up for Boingo. There were songs during this time that were exclusively played live, scrapped, or never recorded for this album, probably because they were written after the album was released. There was also a demo song they made for The Nightmare Before Christmas called This Time, but it never made it into the movie. There was also a music video for the song Insanity that captured what would have been the band's new sound and style. Sadly, the news broke that Boingo would be disbanding. Danny started losing interest in Boingo, developed tinnitus from all these loud rock shows that he played, and his film scoring career was taking off. They went on a farewell tour, reverting back to Oingo Boingo and bringing back the horn section. Their last show was on Halloween 1995. Now that's a hell of a way to go out. Danny Elfman went on to become a well-known film and TV music composer. He would host live shows of his film scores played by orchestras, and even played Dead Man's Party in 2015 after a 20-year hiatus from not playing it. Danny was asked to play a show at Coachella in 2020. He didn't want to do an Oingo Boingo reunion, nor an orchestrated show of his film scores, which he had been doing. But after seeing some performances at the previous year's Coachella, he got the idea that he would do a show combining both his rock music as well as Oingo Boingo songs and his orchestrated film scores, but I think we all know what happened that year. Danny had some time on his hands and was starting to get that rock and roll itch again. He went on to write and release Big Mess in 2021, his first solo record in almost 40 years. It had a more heavy metal punk rock sound than any of the Oingo Boingo albums, including the final Boingo album. Had Oingo Boingo continued, the band would have probably sounded like this. In fact, the Boingo song Insects, straight off of Nothing to Fear, would be modernized for this album. As far as the former Boingo members, they went on to start different bands, and even started Oingo Boingo former members, featuring Johnny Vatos, John Avila, Carl Graves, Sam Sluggo Phipps, and Steve Bartek, along with new members. Oingo Boingo will be remembered as the great new wave, ska, alternative, prog rock, orchestra, Jesus Christmas, too many f***ing genres. Let's just say that Oingo Boingo were a great evolving mixed genre band that celebrated Halloween to the max. They'll also probably be remembered because the name Oingo Boingo supposedly means boobs in Japanese. Maybe Mystic Knights would have been a better name.